All right, hello everyone. Thank you for your patience, just sorting out some technical difficulties. It wouldn't be a conference if we didn't have a few of those. So thank you for waiting, and thank you so much for joining us today for Tarun's talk about managing requirements across programs, projects, and teams. So I'm Shayna, I'm a member of the Atlassian team, and I'm just here to introduce Tarun and get us started. So thanks for waiting. We've got a longer break on the other side of this session, so we may go a few minutes over just to give time for questions and for everyone to come up and chat if they would like to. So take it away.
Yep. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, I'm Tarun Sapra. So I've been working with the Atlassian tools for almost 10 years now, and some of you might know me from the community. I'm pretty active on the online Atlassian community. I'm a community champion there as well. So one of the reasons I wanted to give the talk about this topic is because being so active in the community in the last 6 years, I noticed that there was a certain pattern that people were asking a lot of questions around certain processes in Agile, and then how to implement at the tools level. So there was not like proper documentation out there. There was not proper, how to guides out there. So this is one of the talks that I developed, and I want to keep it as pragmatic as possible so that from next week at least, you can take away some of the tips and tricks that I show and some of the scenarios that I have covered right into your tool set. And I will be keeping it as pragmatic as possible, close to a lot of real-life scenarios in our day-to-day work. So isn't this beautiful? It's a picture of Swiss Alps, and this is how I used to feel, when I first set up my JIRA instance. Everything was good, people were appreciating. There were like around 5 teams using the JIRA instance, and I was like the hero, developing the custom fields, some scripting here and there, workflows, and all those integrations. But then something happened, which happens with all the Atlassian tools. They grew organically very fast in the organization, and everybody wanted to use the Atlassian tools, not just in one location, but in multiple locations. And then there was a problem. Okay, how do we manage the requirements? How do we manage project governance? How do we manage the reporting? And everybody was coming up with their own ideas. Somebody was saying, okay, because the Scrum guide says user story, so we don't want to use story issue type. We want to use user story type. Somebody was saying, okay, I do not want to use the environment custom field. Why don't I have a server environment custom fields? And somebody, for example, a lot of product owners, they were automatically, updating the Confluence pages, not with the requirements, but with doc files. And after like 6 months down the line, nobody knew where those doc files are, because it's hard to search for doc files rather than searching for the actual content. So 6 months down the line, which started as a happy journey, it ended up like being a traffic jam in New Delhi. I was like, what the heck is going on? Management was saying, okay, we are investing so much money in the Atlassian tools, the apps you have bought, but where are the metrics? And I'm a big fan of metrics. You cannot prove that Agile is working until and unless you have the metrics. So why manage requirements in the first place, actually? So it's all about centralized location. Like when I was working on the first project as a Java developer, I asked my manager, okay, I'm working on a certain feature, and I want to know the context. And he said, okay, you want to know the context, you reach out to the business analyst. And then the business analyst gave me the location of a shared drive where the whole documentation of that waterfall project was. And then I realized how difficult it is to manage the requirements. 6 months down the line in the project, you do not know actually what you're working on, because as a developer, you're working on a small story, but you do not know the whole context. And somebody had formatted that drive, so nobody knew where the documentation was. And then actually I met Confluence, so I'm going to be sharing how we can do all this in Confluence. Tracking and reporting. Of course, this is the backbone of any successful Agile implementation with the tools, actually. Because if you cannot track it, you cannot report it, then how would you convince the management to give you, to give you money for the new apps? So it is very important how you're going to track the development items, your release plans. All these things are tied to the original requirements, so you can track everything. And then, of course, if you're working like me in a globally distributed team, you need to have well-structured requirements, well-structured issue tracking, and everything very transparent. Because I have been at eBay at a previous, right now I'm working at Ingencio, but I have worked at eBay before. And there was like architects were in San Jose office, developers were in Europe, and QA team was partly in India and partly in China. So when the developer says done, so then the next morning the QA should know, okay, what to pick up. So there should be dashboards. He should be able able to see, okay, what the developers have done. So there was a need to have consistent workflows, and not just consistent workflows across the organization, but also consistent reporting that can be available in the dashboard. So in the morning when let's say somebody is sitting remotely, they come into the office, they know what needs to be picked up and what has been done so far the previous day, actually. So how many of you know the Agile Spotify model? And okay, that's a nice number. And how many are actually having it in the organization? Okay, few people. So this is the Agile Spotify model. This is getting pretty popular, as we have seen it working quite well, giving quite good results. And basically, you see here it was coming from Spotify by Henrik and Anders. So you see the tribes, you see these squads, you see the chapters. So what exactly these mean? So squad is basically a cross-functional team. It's more like a team which is able to develop a minimum viable product by its own. They have all the skills that are needed within the team. So that is what a squad is. That is what the intention of the squad is, to have everybody in the team. Then basically we have the tribe, which is a collection of squads. So the squad will have a dedicated product owner, and all of these squads and the product owner, they are part of one big tribe. Tribe is a certain functional group, which is, let's say you can have the mobile development tribe, wherein that has different squads for different functionality. It can be payments, it can be UI, the UX features, all those things. So squads can have different features within themselves. That is areas of application development, backend, or let's say a recommendation system. But the whole tribe is something which is a collection of squads with a dedicated product owner, actually. And at the top of the tribe, it depends on the organization. What we have seen at Ingencio works well is a collection of people, which are basically a tribe instead of a single person. Let's say a business person and an architecture person. So that really works at the tribe level. Then we have a chapter. So basically, chapters are cross-cutting units, as you have seen in the previous diagram. So if you are a Java developer or a QA, you're working with a certain mocking library or certain automation framework, then what is the point of having an organization if you cannot share that knowledge with other people? So chapters are specific to the, let's say, the technology stack. It can be a Java chapter, it can be a QA chapter. You meet often, let's say once every fortnight, and you discuss, hey, I'm using this mocking library, I'm using this nice, automation framework, I'm using these APIs, why don't you give it a try? So this is important for knowledge sharing within the organization, so everybody knows, okay, what are the best practices? So because squads can lead up to working in their own silos. So that's why the need of chapters. So these are the three key terms of the Spotify model. But one of the things with the Spotify model is it kind of gives you a good structure of the organization in the squad, tribe, and chapter form. But the thing is, there is nothing about the portfolio level. And that's what we feel was missing at the enterprise level, because you need something which the business can track, which is, let's say, not a user story, but something that wants to be developed in next 6 months' time. So we have a portfolio level, which is a multi-tribe level for capturing, prioritizing, and estimating the business initiatives. So I'm going to show how we have tackled this hierarchy at the level of JIRA, basically in terms of issue types, in terms of processes. But this is something which we have at the current setup, and it works pretty fine for us. So we have the Spotify, using the Spotify model, reorganizing basically the people. And then, of course, at the portfolio level, we have the business roadmap. So the business people know, OK, what needs to be delivered in next 6 months. So we call it something like a Spotty safe model, basically. Because we are also using certain principles of safe, like program increment. We call it program increment. In safe, it is called service increment. So we are using some of the terms from safe for alignment between the squads, because it is important to have certain alignment between the squads. Otherwise, misalignment can lead to features not getting developed and deployed on time, actually. So for alignment between the squads, we are using the concept of service increments, which is inspired from the safe model. And the internal model that we are using is called Ingencio model, but that is a proprietary model, so I cannot share it here. But it is inspired from this, basically, the amalgamation of Spotify and safe. So just to give you a recommended structure, actually, this is a lot of information on one slide, but I didn't want to break it into various slides because this is how it is, actually. This is the end-to-end thing on a slide. So we have sprints, which are basically the stories and the subtasks. Stories are the smallest possible business requirement. Subtasks can be your integration test or what developers are working on. Then that is at the level of the squads. So this is what involves all the ceremonies of Scrum. That is your sprint planning, backlog refinement, and then you have sprint retrospective, sprint demo. All this is at the level of the Scrum. Then you have at the level of the tribe, we have something which is called product backlog, which is basically, in terms of time, if I have to say, epics, we generally think of something which can be delivered. We use the t-shirt size estimation. So basically, roughly something that can be delivered, let's say, within a month or two. So stories are generally estimated for one sprint only. So then at the level of tribes, we have epics. And of course, an epic can have stories in another project as well. So epics are basically, in one tribe, we have epics, and this is how it is mapped. And then we have, of course, for the epics as well, we have certain ceremonies that I'm going to show later. Then at the portfolio level, we have initiatives. And as you can see, there is service increment planning. This is something from SAFE, that the program increment planning and discussion around, OK, how valuable this initiative is for the business. So this is the overall structure. So this is what is the recommended structure. So this is the slide that I developed because I have been to many Agile organizations, Agile conferences, and Atlassian user group events. But one of the things was missing is how do you map the Agile processes with the tools? So there was no concrete recommended structure of what to do, actually, how to map the process with the tools. So this is one of the recommended structure that works pretty well for us, and we are using that at Ingencio. So what we have done is one tribe is mapped to one JIRA project. So if multiple tribes are working on a single initiative, I'm going to show that later, one tribe always is in control or leads that initiative, so that at the level of JIRA, that is good for reporting. So I'm going to show that some samples. Then you have squad. That is, each squad has its own Scrum board. Because in JIRA, the board is nothing but a view on the issues coming from the JQL filter. So we have a custom field called squad, and that has custom values. So once a product owner at a certain point selects a certain squad, that automatically goes into the Scrum board of that squad. So I'm going to show that sample as well later on. So basically, you have a project, and then you have squads in that. So that how this is divided is you have the tribe, and then you have the squads, and each squad is nothing but a Scrum board. So the moment you, on a user story or a defect, you select the squad, that automatically comes into the Scrum backlog of that particular squad. Then we have the release roadmap. This is a set of epics over time. We use basically a combination of JIRA reporting and Excel reports. We use better Excel plugin to generate some reports from JIRA to getting our release roadmap. So this is the set of epics over time. Then we have business roadmap, which is basically a set of initiatives over time. So like going back to this slide, so you see the whole hierarchy. It is story, epics, and initiative. This is the hierarchy which works very well for us. One of the AntiPatterns that that I have seen, of course, for me it is an AntiPattern, so I'm happy to debate with somebody who thinks it is not, that sometimes what people are doing for adopting SAFE, they are renaming epics to features. Because in SAFE you have the stories, features, and epics. But if you're using JIRA, don't do that. Because the problem is when you're using JIRA, it's amazingly flexible, but there is one thing in JIRA that you should not rename, that is epic issue type or story issue type. It is hardwired into JIRA. So you have, because you have an epic link custom field, you have epic panel, and then you have plugins like from script runner plugins, JQL functions, issues in epic or epics off. So if you rename epic, all the time, every time you use these features or you see the epic panel, you will get features instead of epics. And it is very hard to train all the product owners sitting across the globe. And they would be like, OK, I'm using epic panel. Why am I getting features? Or I run a JQL query, get me all the epics of the story, and I get features. So you have to retrain the employees. So do not rename the stories and the epics. Like, do not rename the epics to features. This is one of the things I see people doing. Don't do that. So this is, again, coming back to the release and service increment version. We use fixed version in JIRA for managing our releases. So we have a service increment after every 8 weeks. That is 4 sprints. So we have a basically the SI release, that is the program increment, what you have in SAFe, we call it service increment. We have SI release after every 2 months, basically. And of course, if it is something is urgent for the business, we have prioritization in place, we have reporting in place. It can be released much before as well. But all these squads work together, and we have something of certain ceremonies which are similar to the Agile release train, and we can make a major release every 2 months easily, and you will see from the reports how it has, how well it is going right now with the throughput and the frequency, how nicely it has reduced over a period of time. So then you have the portfolio hierarchy. So basically, to get an overview picture, we use JIRA portfolio as of now, but there are certain things which we feel is missing. So we are exploring other plugins. Basically, in what we do, JIRA portfolio is you have the hierarchy, initiative, epics, and stories, and then you can create within just click and then create those issue types. But the problem right now we are facing is that snapshot is not available on the dashboard, nor in the Confluence. So somebody has to log on to portfolio to see the whole hierarchy. So we are exploring structure and big picture, actually. And then, of course, the content hierarchy. So the good thing here is the same hierarchy of the requirements, initiative, epic, stories we have in Confluence. So each epic has a dedicated page. And within that epic, we have the content of the epic. For example, you cannot have architecture diagrams in JIRA. So we create those architecture diagrams using plugins in Confluence or more detailed documentation, because JIRA is not meant for documentation. It is meant for project management and tracking. Confluence is for documentation, and it has a much better search than JIRA, actually, content search. So we use Confluence for all the content. So in the Confluence, we have the same hierarchy, initiatives, epics, and then stories. And all the statuses of everything is in real time using JIRA macros. So if you're a product owner, you want to see what is the progress of this epic, you click on the page of the epic, and you see all the linked stories of that epic along with their status using the JIRA macro. And we use the table filter plugin even to create more reports around it within the Confluence. So we have table filter plugin, and that is wrapped around the JIRA macro table, basically. So as a product owner, you don't even have to go to JIRA. You can get all the reports in Confluence. But some of the reports are only available in JIRA, so I'm going to show some samples of that. So this is the delivery rhythms. We have initiatives at the level of strategy. So of course, this is the high-level roadmap, which is decided by the business, all the initiatives, because this is something which is at least 6 months of work. So there is a lot of review process. We have a whole workflow of, OK, review and this and that, and a lot of automation rules. So once somebody says add it to roadmap, that's like one of the workflow statuses we have. And I have an automation rule in place using script runner that you cannot add an epic to an initiative once it is added to roadmap. So I have put that script in the validation phase of the workflow. So the moment anybody tries to add an epic in the initiative, they get an error. Because the initiative is already approved by the business and it is added to roadmap, the budgeting is fixed and everything, so you cannot add an epic to the initiative. These kind of things are small, but very important actually for the business, because finance and the money is involved in this. So you need to be sure that once something is done, it is done, and nothing more can be added. And if something is more urgent, then the business has to approve. Then, of course, we have the release plan and high-level estimations. For epics, we have the t-shirt size estimation. So that's what we do for the epics. We estimate them at the time of basically splitting the initiatives. It is a dedicated ceremony which we have of splitting the initiatives into epics. There and then the epics are estimated, and then basically we get a high-level release plan, okay? Because when the business needs it, there is a certain field that we use. It's called business value. It's not story points, it's called business value. So based on the priority of the business value, the epics are further split into stories by other product owners. So this is a common practice which might be useful for you as well. So we use a certain thing called business value, which is basically the higher the value, the more the initiative or epic is important. And further down, like you have stories, that is basically your normal sprint plan, estimation, story points, and then of course, then you have your CI/CD cycle. So configuration and governance. So governance is something which is, sometimes people who are into Agile, they do not like the term governance because it reminds them of the waterfall days. But I'm not talking about that governance, but governance at the tools level is important. Because if you do not have governance in a large organization, you cannot get reports. And you cannot get reports, then the management will never be convinced that whatever you are doing is correct. So reporting is important, and governance is the backbone of reporting. So I'm going to show some examples later on what we do, because governance rules are important for reporting. For example, there was a status called in review, and the product owners were using it for reviewing their requirements, and somehow some development team thought of using that same status to show that the code is in review. So you do not want those things. You do not want in progress to be dev in progress, or is a release in progress, or things like that. You do not want the custom fields to, the same custom field to mean 3 different things for different people. So there has to be some, governance, and for that, you need experienced JIRA administrators who know, because one of the things I can share, like I have been part of 2 major Agile transformations across multiple locations, successful transformations, and Agile coaches are good, but they come with their guns blazing. This is how it is, and this is going to work. So which is fine, but if somebody is just a JIRA administrator and they do not have any insights on Agile, 3 months down the line, they will not be able to create any reports. Because Agile coaches sometimes are not in, complete understanding of the tools or what is possible and what is not possible. And if you just do as they say, sometimes things can go wrong. So you need to know, okay, what are the possibilities of the tool, what are the plugins available. So these things are important so that you can create relevant reports down the line, you can create relevant dashboards and all those things. So managing content in Confluence. Content creation hierarchy is managed in Confluence, and as I shared, all the hierarchy is in Confluence. You can exactly and very easily see the progress of each and every item, track the progress via JIRA macros, use your table filters, amazing plugin around the JIRA macros, and then you can really see, okay, what is going on, filter data in real time, all those things. So we do all that in Confluence, actually, and all our content is in Confluence. So people can also search based on requirements, which sometimes doesn't work properly in JIRA. The text search is very unpredictable. Sometimes it gives unpredictable results if you use complex text strings or special characters in JQL, while it works pretty well in Confluence. So consistent workflows and boards, consistency statuses across workflows and boards, like I shared. So the workflows have to be consistent. The statuses, some of the teams, of course, because currently we are rolling out in this Agile process and the tools in 7 different locations. So we cannot have each location follow the same process. But what you can do, there can be 5 or 6 statuses which you can say that, hey, these means these. That is, these are the status, and this is what they mean, and that is fixed for all the locations. But then, of course, then each location can have its own way of working. You can configure that in the workflows, but some important statuses, they have to mean the same thing. Otherwise, in reporting, it's going to create chaos. Same goes for custom fields. Try to restrict the number of custom fields, try to restrict the values, and custom fields should mean the same thing. You have custom fields like, environment, then you should not have another custom field which is called QA environment. The environment should have the value QA. So, and then of course, I'm going to show an example of how you can use a combination of Scrum and Kanban in a single workflow for the feature lifecycle. And this is one of the samples I'm going to show later. Automation, effective workflows, and project governance, as I shared, both of the things are very important. Another example I can give you is because our releases are across epics. So one of the automation rules we have is when anybody creates a story, the story automatically inherits the epic's fixed version. So this was something which was, I had to write some scripts for it because the story can be in another project as well, and that project might not have the fixed version. Or that might have the fixed version, but the start date might be different because that is a completely different thing. So this is one of the automation rules, because then you cannot, you do not want your product owner, Scrum Master to struggle that, okay, this is the epic, let me find all the stories, let me bulk edit all the stories to the same fixed version, and then all that is reflected in your reports, because half the stories would be missing because that is a different fixed version than the epic. So it is important that the stories inherit the fixed version of the epic if you are using your releases for the epic. And this is what works for us very well, because in the reporting we see consistency. Then, of course, we have scripted fields. That is, again, an important thing. Basically, scripted fields are very powerful to create, manipulate data in real time. For example, if a product owner is working on a story and he forgets this story belongs to which initiative, because an initiative can have 10 epics, each epic can have 10 stories. So I created a scripted field wherein on the story itself, you see the issue key of the parent initiative and the issue summary of the parent initiative. This is a very small thing, but in real world, this is very helpful. Because then on the story itself, you know the context, you know the initiative, you know the issue. You can click on it and you can go to the initiative. Because only on the story, only the epic link is present, but then you have to go to the epic, then you have to go to the initiative. But if you have that on the story itself, that is helpful. Also, there were some different requirements. Basically, sometimes what happens is a release is started, the start date of the fixed version has passed, and then we add something to it. So there was a requirement for a report to find out all those issues that were added to the fixed version after the fixed version was started. So I created a scripted field that would return yes or no. So whether this was added to the fixed version after it started, yes or no. So that was helpful for the business to track the finances and the deliveries, actually. Consistency checks, this is also important, actually. Consistency checks, okay, somebody starts working on the user story and they forgot to move the epics into in progress. So the epic is still in open in the report, but the story is being worked upon. So this was, again, we have some consistency check, we have some automation rules. So the moment you move a story into in progress, the epic automatically moves into in progress. So this is one of the many automation rules we have. App essentials. So yeah, I mean, JIRA without an app is like, yeah, Android without an app or iPhone without an app. So you need to have apps if you want to do anything with reporting or automation, actually. So these are the plugins that we use heavily: Better Excel, Script Runner, Portfolio and Structure, Data Plane for reporting, and Tempo for management of the timesheets. So Better Excel we use, you cannot give the permission to your JIRA to all the customers. So there is a need sometimes to share the reports with customers. So we use Better Excel to extract the reports. They are not simple Excel reports, but we have done our capacity planning using Better Excel and Groovy scripting. So you can create the capacity planning reports and share with some senior management, because sometimes senior managers do not just want to log on to JIRA at a very senior level to see, okay, what is. So just they are used to Excel sheets. So you show them the Excel sheets or to the end customer. So we use Better Excel for that. For Script Runner, I mean, everything related to automation I do with Script Runner. So be it workflow automation, scripted fields, custom REST endpoints, because certain things are not available in JIRA's REST APIs. So all those things. Then, of course, portfolio and structure. Data Plane is for the reporting, so we use Data Plane. We have been running into a couple of small performance issues lately, but it works pretty well for us. If you have, I mean, yeah, if you use it well, then I mean, if the JQL filters are not really bad, then it works pretty well. And of course, for the time management, we use Tempo. So this is the example, combination of Scrum and Kanban. This is one of the workflows. So the left side of the workflow is the PO Kanban board, the middle is the Dev Scrum board, and the rightmost is the Release Kanban board. So the moment PO says, I'm done, ready for sprint, the story automatically moves in the backlog of the Scrum boards of the development team. Because as you remember, I told that each squad has its own Scrum board. So the moment PO says, I'm done, the story automatically moves to in progress. And the definition of done, in general for the teams, is it should be done in the integration environment. Not on their machine, of course, but in the integration environment, it should be done. They move the user story to done, and that done is basically automatically gets mapped into the Kanban backlog, because now you have backlog in the Kanban as well of the release team. So this is one of the samples that I'm showing, but some of the teams, they do it other way as well. So they have the workflow till done. But then the moment they move to done, there is an automation rule to create a linked ticket into the board of in a separate project of the release team. So the release team can also use a separate project. This is the use case I'm showing if everything is happening in the same project, basically. So I guess it works really nicely if you have a small team. Otherwise, if it is complex and a lot of release work is also involved, just make a separate project and create a link ticket using an automation rule. But this works pretty fine if you have a small team and not a very complicated release process. Reporting, my favorite topic, actually. So this is our motto. I work for ACE team, Agile Center of Excellence in Ingencio Group. Keep it lean, make reporting a dashboard, not an activity. So we have made so many dashboards in JIRA, actually. So whenever you log on, depending on whether you're a manager, a Scrum Master, a product owner, or a developer, you see what you want to see or what you should see, actually, what matters in Agile. So you see all those metrics on your dashboard. So these are some of the reporting essentials. Tribe dashboards, we have basically then progress across each squads with historical velocity. That should be available. Then product backlog, how is the product backlog evolving over a period of time? What is done, what is not done, as per release versions, all those things are there. How things are happening in your release cycles, those kind of dashboards are there. And of course, then we have global reports, number of defects going up, number of defects going down, what is happening across the tribes, squads in terms of defects. So all those reports are there in form of gadgets on dashboards. Yeah, this is a report which is really loved by a lot of teams, and this is something which is not supported out of the box, sadly, in JIRA. So if you're a new product owner or Scrum Master, you want to see the historical velocity of the team, and the only way you can do it right now, out of the box in JIRA, go to every Scrum board and just click on report, and then keep on clicking, 6, 7 times you see, and then you kind of calculate, okay, this is how it is, because there is no historical velocity available in the report section of the Scrum board. You have to change the sprints, and then you see the report, and then sometimes you lose context. Okay, what was the story points in 3 sprints ago? So this is what we developed using the data plane and script runner plugin. So here, I mean, this is important because Agile doesn't mean no planning. You have to have at least 3 months of predictability to tell the business, this is the velocity. That's why we have velocity. So you say, okay, this is the velocity, and then this is, I hope this much work would be done by the team in next 3 months, let's say, if these many sprints are there. So for that, this graph is useful. And we have it at every squad level. We have it across the squads for every tribe. So this is just like tip of the iceberg. We have many more, but this is really cool. I like it. So then, of course, features across releases. This is basically the evolution of whole epics delivered from August 27, 2017 to July 29, 2018. The each legend here is basically, as you can see down, NG14, NG08. These are release names. So how it is, and it is all clickable. So in real time, you can click on it. You can go to the JIRA issue navigator view. So everything is clickable, So this is helpful for management actually to see how teams are working, what is the evolution of product backlog. They can dive deep into this. This is another chart, story points delivered across releases. Again, this is similar. And this is for a tribe, global reporting next generation, GRNG. So this is for a tribe. And then, of course, you can have it for the squads as well, for different tribes. There are like around many tribes in different locations. So we have for every tribe, it is there. The green one is the stories. The red ones are the defects. Basically, anything outside, any bug within the squad, within the sprint timeline is called a bug. But once the development team says we are done on the integration environment, anything that comes after that, we call it as a defect. So that is the red ones, the defects, and the yellow one are basically the task and the technical depth. Sometimes the developers are busy fixing the automation test or the Selenium test whole day. So, I mean, this is that, and yeah. So this is another example of stories. So this is how we had an impact. This was the impact on the feature throughput. So average time to market, fraud tribe is basically a tribe that works on the algorithms for the fraud detection. Basically, this is a tribe. And you can see the average time to market reduced from 100 days to 20 days. So I'm going to tell the reasons, the 3 major reasons why this happened, why we have such a nice improvement. So this is one of the graphs, and this is, again, an official slide of Ingencio Group, how we achieved 300%. Each legend is a tribe, how we achieved 300% increase in throughput, actually. Feature throughput is the number of stories from the point of developer says, I want to develop it, to the point it gets actually deployed. So this is a 300% increase that we have seen. So the productivity boost, so these 3 major are the factors of productivity boost. Agile transformation using the Spotty Safe model, basically Atlassian stack for reporting, tracking, planning, traceability, everything we use the Atlassian stack for. And then very important, actually, the microservices architecture. So some of the organizations are going for the microservices architecture using Spring Boot, and that really accelerates the time to release because that reduces the dependencies. Each service can be deployed in its own container, and that is really good, actually, because if you are working on a monolith application, if you do not do these things, then the first two things will not give you much results. So from a technical point of view, this is very important that you, because there's so much dependency in the legacy code that you need to have a microservice architecture, at least whatever is possible, you should try to reduce the dependency so that, or do something that the units are deployable independently and quickly, actually, preferably these days in the Docker containers. So, and when you have done all this, you're back to the Swiss Alps. So now you know when you add a new squad, they will have their own dashboards. Whenever there's a new tribe, they will have their own dashboards. Everything is automated. You have back your peace of mind. And yeah, back in the vacation mode. Thank you.
As easy as that. All right, we have a few minutes for questions if anyone wants to ask Tarun some specifics or to go back into one of the topics he covered. So who wants to go first?
I compliment for the architecture and the solution. We are in a similar situation, but we put initiative, capability, feature, epic, user story. We haven't not the subtask. My question is more on the financial attach. You said that you use tempo timesheet.
Yes.
So you use timesheet, not the evaluation in story point to track data.
No. That is, the evaluation is on story points at the story level, at the epic level, that is the t-shirt size. Tempo timesheet is only for the management of time at the subtask level. People log hours on subtask and also for the time management of the contractors.
Okay.
That is what the tempo timesheet is.
We are trying to do something more particular because we are trying to use Agile and estimation, so the ratio of the teams across all to avoid to do timesheet, also for the financial. So I is also wondering to understand overall if there is something
at the
similar.
story points level, it is better to use at the user story level, it is best to use the story points because then, initially the team might be, if they are new, it is hard to understand how can we estimate in something which is not like a unit of time, but it is like relative sizing. So you have one story which is like 1 point. If it is the easiest, then you can say, okay, the other one is 3 points. Good practice is to do it in Fibonacci series, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21. So like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, but you need an agile coach for this.
Yeah. We are doing, there is an agile transformation, so we are doing. Thank you.
All right. Next question.
Thank you for sharing. Actually, we use more or less the same methods for a tribe with about 30 Scrum team.
Yeah.
Even if trying to make them as much as independent as possible, we still have many dependencies between the teams, and which is giving hard time for the planning, for portfolio vision, and I would like to know how you managing that, like the dependence between the teams.
Yes, this is more up to the product owner to have the requirements in such a way that there is like it is on the because the squad in itself is something which should have all the cross-functional skills to deliver. Yeah. Ideally, that should be the case. Yes, but that is what we aspire for, and if there is a dependency, we feel we can split the story actually. And we can make a duplicate story with reduced functionality for the other team, actually. And then we can, of course, through JIRA, we can link them. We can have a report, okay, but ideally this should happen. This is happening in some teams, but in some teams which doesn't happen, which are not mature, agile, because agile maturity takes at least 5 years. It's not at least you do it in 6 months. So at least 5-year process it is that you are going through it, and then it's like really you are agile. So in terms of estimation, so this is what I can suggest. It's up to the product owner.
It's more interesting. The other observation is regarding the past for the velocity.
Yes, historical velocity.
I just use the velocity chart in JIRA and gives the past of all the...
Yes, but that velocity chart is not available as a dashboard gadget. So that is an open
Yes.
ticket in JIRA.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Maybe this side of the room? Over here? See one over here?
Hi, we just started as well with tribes and squads within our company. The problem that I'm having currently is, well, for one, the dependencies as well. But second, the business wants to make sure that the POs are creating the stories actually as small as possible, to not release that many big bangs. But how did you experience that part? So that cycle time is really low, and the epics are that small to deliver the business value as fast as possible.
Yeah, I mean, for the stories, the rule of thumb is it should be the smallest possible business feature. So if you cannot split it more, then it is a story. But if it is like a story that you see is gonna overflow, like I read it on the site, the Mountain Goat software. It's a very famous Agile site. Somebody has written that an epic is basically a story that cannot be done in one sprint. So, I mean, but that is up to the product owner actually, because this is hard for me right now to like explain in words, but this is up to the product owners and be really somebody who has done it before. He needs to sit right next to them and make sure that this story should be deployed end to end after 2 weeks, let's say, at least till the integration environment. Yeah.
All right, going to take one more question and then let everyone enjoy the break or come up and ask more questions.
So you are using Portfolio for planning?
Yes and no. Basically, we are using Portfolio more for a view. We get a nice things on Portfolio, like the whole planning as in, like this is the sprint, the sprint is overestimated and all those things, but we are not actually using Portfolio for it. We are more of using it to get a view of the whole hierarchy, to create the stories under the epic, to create the epic under the initiative, but we are using the better Excel for the capacity planning. We extract the Excel report, and that extracted Excel report has some Groovy scripts that we have written, and based on basically how many epics a tribe is delivering in a certain service increment. So based on that, we are doing planning, and we are doing it using better Excel in Excel itself. We're not right now doing the planning part in JIRA, because we felt that Portfolio was hard to train people across the organization, very difficult.
All right.
That's what my experience is, at least.
Yeah, because I'm asking because we are facing the thing that we would like to look back to see that how good we do on planning. Yeah. Like after we're done, okay, now look back to see that we overestimate, underestimate, what part that we can improve. Yeah. And we use the Portfolio, but the Portfolio currently, it doesn't help us.
Yeah. I mean, for the estimation, because overestimation and underestimation for the story, you can see in your sprint review. If the stories are not getting done, then it means you're underestimating them, like for the story level. And for the epic level, basically, you can see, okay, this was the T-shirt size, or whether or not it is getting complete in a certain release or not. So for that level, you can use these stats.
All right, thank you, everyone. And if you have any other questions, feel free to come up and chat with Tarun. Have a nice afternoon.